Catherine had always been a woman of resilience. But nothing tested her strength more than the day her son Gabriel lost the ability to walk. At 64 years old, her entire life revolved around caring for him, a commitment she had upheld for the past 23 years. The accident that left Gabriel paralyzed happened when he was just 12 years old, changing both of their lives forever. Despite the hardship, Catherine never saw her role as a burden, only as a mother's duty to her child. Every morning, she woke up before the sun, moving through her modest home with the kind of practiced routine that only years of dedication could perfect. She would brew a fresh pot of coffee, prepare breakfast with meticulous care, and greet Gabriel with a warm smile, no matter how exhausted she felt. Their bond was strengthened through the years not only by necessity but by genuine love. Though Gabriel had lost the ability to walk, Catherine ensured he never lost his spirit. She filled their home with warmth, making sure he always felt supported, both physically and emotionally. Their days followed a predictable rhythm: meals together, conversations about their favorite television shows, and long evenings spent watching soap operas, which had become their shared escape. To anyone else, soap operas were just entertainment. But for Gabriel, they were a window to a world beyond his condition. And for Catherine, they were an opportunity to see her son smile, something she cherished more than anything. Gabriel's paralysis had required Catherine to become more than just a mother. She was his caregiver, nurse, and emotional rock. She managed all his medical appointments, assisted with his hygiene, and adjusted the house to accommodate his wheelchair. Her devotion was unwavering, even when it meant sacrificing her own needs. While other women her age spent their days enjoying retirement, spending time with friends, or pursuing hobbies, Catherine's life was singularly focused on Gabriel's well-being. She rarely complained, finding purpose in her son's care. The deep love she had for him overshadowed the physical exhaustion, the financial struggles, and the quiet loneliness that sometimes crept in during the late hours of the night. Despite the challenges, there was always laughter in their home. Catherine had a way of making even the most routine moments feel special. She never let Gabriel feel like a burden, ensuring he had a life filled with as much normalcy as possible. They celebrated small victories, like a day without pain, a new physical therapy exercise, or even just finishing an episode of their favorite show together. These little joys became the foundation of their relationship, proof that love and determination could overcome even the harshest of realities. For 23 years, Catherine had devoted herself to Gabriel without hesitation. But she had no idea that everything she knew about her son's condition was about to change. What she thought was a life of unchanging routine was about to take a turn she never expected. One that would leave her questioning everything she had believed for over 2 decades. Gabriel's life changed forever on a rainy afternoon when he was just 12 years old. It was supposed to be a routine drive with his parents. But in a single moment, everything was torn apart. His father, Henry, was behind the wheel, guiding their car down a slick road when he lost control. The vehicle skidded, rolled over, and crashed with devastating force. Henry, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was ejected from the car and killed instantly. Gabriel, though strapped in, suffered a traumatic impact that severely damaged his spine, leaving him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. The accident shattered Catherine's world. In one tragic day, she lost her husband and was forced to face the painful reality that her son would never walk again. As she sat by his hospital bed, watching his small body struggle to adjust to this new existence, she made a silent promise: she would dedicate herself completely to his care. No matter how hard it got, no matter what sacrifices she had to make, she would never let him feel alone in this battle. Adjusting to life after the accident was incredibly difficult. Gabriel had always been an active, energetic boy, constantly running around the neighborhood with his friends, playing soccer in the yard, and climbing trees without a second thought. Now, confined to a wheelchair, he was forced to relearn the most basic aspects of his daily routine. Catherine transformed their home into a space that could accommodate his needs, installing ramps, rearranging furniture, and making sure every part of the house was accessible. More importantly, she became his source of strength, encouraging him through the endless doctor visits, therapy sessions, and emotional struggles that came with his new reality. At first, the weight of it all seemed unbearable. Gabriel would cry at night, mourning the life he had lost, and Catherine would hold him, whispering reassurances she hoped he believed. She refused to let despair take over. She reminded him of everything he still had, his intelligence, his sense of humor, his dreams for the future. Slowly, Gabriel began to accept his new life, though the pain of losing his father and his mobility never fully faded. Over time, mother and son developed a deep, unbreakable bond. Their love and resilience carried them through the darkest moments, turning their home into a place of warmth rather than sorrow. Catherine never stopped pushing forward, never allowed herself to dwell on what had been lost. Instead, she focused on what was still possible. What she didn't know, however, was that after all these years, something impossible was about to happen, something that would challenge everything she thought she knew about Gabriel's condition. At first, Catherine dismissed it as her imagination. A twitch here, a small movement there, it had to be a trick of the eye. Gabriel had been paralyzed for 23 years, and she had long accepted that his condition wouldn't change. But as the days passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Gabriel, who had always been optimistic despite his condition, had started acting distant, as if he was hiding something. There were moments when he seemed lost in thought, his expression shifting between fear and uncertainty. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching their favorite soap opera, Catherine noticed something strange. Gabriel was covered with a blanket to keep warm, but underneath it, she saw the fabric shift, just slightly, almost unnoticeably. Her breath caught in her throat. Was that his foot moving? She stared, waiting to see if it would happen again. But the moment passed, and Gabriel acted as if nothing had happened. Her heart pounded. Was it an involuntary spasm? Had she imagined it? She told herself not to get ahead of things. But once the thought entered her mind, she couldn't let it go. Over the next few nights, she paid closer attention, trying to catch another sign. Again, she saw the movement, small but unmistakable. Gabriel's toes seemed to wiggle beneath the blanket, yet he never mentioned it, never reacted as if he had felt it himself. Catherine felt torn. On one hand, she wanted desperately to believe that it was possible. Could Gabriel be regaining some mobility after all these years? But on the other hand, she was afraid. What if she was wrong? What if she got her hopes up only to be devastated? And more importantly, why wasn't Gabriel telling her anything? If he had noticed the changes, why would he keep it a secret from her? Her mind raced with possibilities. Maybe he was afraid to hope. Maybe he thought she wouldn't believe him. Or, worst of all, maybe he was deliberately hiding something. The uncertainty ate at her, and she knew she couldn't just sit back and wonder anymore. She needed answers. One morning, after preparing Gabriel's breakfast, she made a decision. If he wasn't going to tell her what was going on, she would have to find out herself. She hated the idea of spying on him. It felt like a betrayal of trust, but her concern for him outweighed her guilt. If there was even the slightest chance that he was recovering, she had to know. Later that afternoon, while Gabriel was at his medical appointment, Catherine visited a security agency and arranged to have hidden cameras installed throughout their home. She told herself it was for his own good, a way to ensure his safety. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was looking for something more. That night, as she tucked Gabriel into bed, she felt a mix of anticipation and dread. By the next morning, she would finally have the answers she had been searching for. Catherine's hands trembled as she checked the hidden camera footage the next morning. She had barely stepped out of the house under the excuse of running errands before pulling out her phone to review the recordings. Her heart pounded as she fast-forwarded through the night's footage, watching the stillness of their modest home. And then she saw it. Something that nearly made her drop the phone. There, on the screen, Gabriel was alone in his bedroom, exactly where she had left him. But as the minutes passed, she watched in shock as he slowly, with visible effort, sat up in bed, her breath caught as he reached toward the edge of the mattress, his muscles visibly straining. Then, with even greater struggle, he shifted his legs over the side of the bed. Catherine's eyes widened. He was trying to stand. Her emotions collided: shock, joy, confusion, even a twinge of anger. Gabriel had told her nothing about this. After all these years of caring for him, after all the love and sacrifices she had made, why had he kept this a secret? If he was regaining movement, why had he chosen to hide it? Rushing home, Catherine forced herself to stay calm. She needed to hear the truth from Gabriel himself. As she entered the house, she found him in his usual spot, lying on the couch, covered with his blanket, just like any other day. He looked up and smiled, completely unaware that she knew his secret. The rest of the day passed in a blur, but Catherine could hardly focus. She waited anxiously for their nightly routine, knowing she had to confront him. As they sat together watching their soap opera, she once again noticed the slight movement beneath the blanket. This time, she didn't ignore it. Without hesitation, she turned to him. "Gabriel," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Are you able to move your toes?" Gabriel's face drained of color. His eyes widened in shock, and for a long moment, he was silent. Catherine watched as panic flickered across his face. He swallowed hard, looking away as if trying to find the right words. Finally, with a deep sigh, he admitted the truth. "Yes, Mom," he whispered. "Since I started therapy with Dr. Sophia, I've been feeling some changes. But I was afraid to tell you, afraid you'd be upset or that it wouldn't last." Catherine's heart clenched. Tears welled in her eyes. Not from anger, but from overwhelming relief. "Oh, Gabriel," she said, reaching for his hands. "This is the best news I could ever hear." She pulled him into a tight embrace, feeling a mixture of joy, hope, and determination. If there was even a chance that he could walk again, she would do everything in her power to make sure he got there. Catherine could hardly sleep that night. Gabriel's confession echoed in her mind. He had been feeling movement in his legs for a while but had been too afraid to tell her. She didn't know whether to feel overjoyed or heartbroken. Had he really thought she would be mad? That she wouldn't believe in him? More than anything, she wished he had trusted her enough to share this sooner. But there was no time to dwell on the past. What mattered now was the future, and the possibility that Gabriel could walk again. The next morning, Catherine wasted no time. She scheduled an appointment with Dr. Noah, the physician who had been overseeing Gabriel's condition for years. As they sat in the doctor's office, Gabriel nervously described the subtle changes he had been experiencing, the slight tingling in his legs, the ability to move his toes, and the growing strength he felt when trying to sit up. Dr. Noah listened carefully, nodding as he took notes. After a thorough examination, the doctor finally spoke. "These improvements are remarkable," he said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. "For someone who has been paralyzed for over 2 decades, this kind of progress is extremely rare. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not guaranteed that he'll fully regain mobility. But there's definitely hope." Catherine clutched Gabriel's hand, tears threatening to spill over. "So, there's a chance?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Noah nodded. "Yes, but it's going to take time, effort, and a lot of patience. Intensive physiotherapy is crucial. If Gabriel continues working hard, he might be able to stand and even walk again. But we have to manage expectations. This will be a long and challenging road." Gabriel exhaled deeply, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. "I was afraid to hope," he admitted quietly, "afraid that if I let myself believe, I'd just end up disappointed." Catherine squeezed his hand. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," she assured him. "No matter what happens, we'll go through this together." The drive home was filled with unspoken emotions. Gabriel stared out the window, lost in thought, while Catherine stole glances at him, her heart swelling with determination. She had spent 23 years caring for him, never daring to dream of a moment like this. Now, for the first time, hope felt real. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Catherine made a promise. "We're going to give this everything we've got," she told Gabriel firmly. "No matter how hard it gets, we're not giving up." Gabriel looked at her, the doubt in his eyes slowly being replaced with something else, belief. He nodded. "Okay, Mom, let's do this." And with that, their journey toward a new future began, one filled with uncertainty, struggle, and countless challenges, but also with the greatest gift of all, hope. Gabriel's road to recovery was not going to be easy, but for the first time in 23 years, he had hope. With Dr. No's encouragement and his mother's unwavering support, he committed himself fully to physiotherapy. His sessions became the focal point of his life, each one pushing his body beyond limits he never thought he could surpass. His therapist, Dr. Sophia, played a crucial role in his progress, guiding him through exercises designed to strengthen his muscles and improve his mobility. At first, even the simplest movements felt impossible. Gabriel's legs were weak from years of disuse, and every attempt to stand left him exhausted. The frustration was overwhelming. There were moments when he wanted to give up, when he wondered if the pain and struggle were even worth it. But then he would look at his mother, her eyes filled with encouragement. Her hands always ready to steady him, and he knew he had to keep going. Sophia proved to be more than just a skilled therapist, she was also his biggest motivator. She pushed him just enough, never allowing him to dwell in self-doubt. "You've already beaten the odds by making it this far," she told him one afternoon, helping him stretch his legs. "Now let's see how much further you can go." Slowly, progress began to show. At first, it was just better control over his toes. Then, his legs started to feel stronger, his muscles responding more actively to movement. The day he managed to shift himself from his wheelchair to the parallel bars without assistance, Catherine nearly burst into tears. As weeks turned into months, Gabriel's exercises became more intense. He spent hours working on his balance, strengthening his core, and relearning how to engage muscles that had been dormant for over 2 decades. Sophia adjusted his therapy plan as he improved, challenging him with new exercises that pushed him closer to standing on his own. Then, one morning, something extraordinary happened. Gabriel was gripping the support bars, sweat dripping from his forehead, when he felt a surge of strength unlike anything before. His legs trembled, but they held him. With a deep breath, he took a step forward. A real step. Sophia gasped, her face lighting up with excitement. "You did it, Gabriel," she exclaimed, steadying him as he took another shaky step. Gabriel let out a breathless laugh, tears welling in his eyes. For the first time in over 20 years, he was walking, however unsteady, however slow. He was walking. That evening, Catherine sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "I always believed in you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Gabriel smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, true confidence. The road ahead was still long, but he had already come further than anyone had ever expected. With Sophia's expertise and his mother's love, Gabriel was determined to keep pushing forward. He wasn't just learning to walk again, he was reclaiming his life. Step by step, as Gabriel's body grew stronger, something else began to change. His heart. His physiotherapist, Dr. Sophia, had been by his side through every grueling session, pushing him past his limits and celebrating even his smallest victories. Over time, their relationship evolved beyond patient and therapist. Gabriel found himself looking forward to their sessions not just for the physical progress but because of the way Sophia made him feel. She was more than just a medical professional, she was his friend, his motivator, and, if he was honest with himself, the reason he wanted to keep fighting. At first, Gabriel ignored his feelings. He told himself it was just gratitude, that he was simply appreciative of everything Sophia had done for him. But the more time they spent together, the harder it became to deny the truth. He admired the way she spoke, the passion she had for her work, the way she never let him give up. And then there were the little moments, the shared laughs between exercises, the way she adjusted his form with such care, the way her smile lingered whenever he succeeded. One afternoon, after a particularly intense session, Gabriel sat catching his breath while Sophia reviewed her notes. The room was quiet except for the sound of her pen scratching against paper. Taking a deep breath, Gabriel finally found the courage to speak. "Sophia," he started hesitantly, "there's something I need to tell you." She looked up, her warm brown eyes meeting his. "What is it, Gabriel?" His heart pounded. He hadn't planned on confessing anything. But now, the words were spilling out before he could stop them. "Since I started therapy with you, I haven't just been getting stronger physically. You've helped me in ways I can't even put into words. And I think I've fallen for you." Sophia blinked in surprise. For a moment, Gabriel feared he had just ruined everything. But then, a small, shy smile spread across her face. "Gabriel," she said softly, "I won't lie, this is complicated. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt something too." Relief flooded through him, mixed with nervous excitement. "So, what do we do?" Sophia sighed. glancing down at her notes before looking back at him. For now, we keep things as they are. You're still my patient, and I want to make sure your recovery stays the priority. But that doesn't mean we can't see where this leads. Gabriel nodded, understanding her hesitation. The last thing he wanted was to jeopardize his progress, or put Sophia in a difficult position. But knowing that his feelings weren't one-sided filled him with a new kind of hope. From that moment on, their sessions carried an unspoken energy between them. They exchanged lingering glances, quiet smiles, and moments of silent understanding. Their relationship was changing, growing into something neither of them had expected. And though they kept it a secret for now, Gabriel knew one thing for certain: Sophia wasn't just helping him walk again. She was giving him a reason to move forward. Gabriel had spent years believing that love was something meant for other people, something he would never experience for himself. But now, everything was different. His heart was full in a way it had never been before. And the reason was clear: Sophia. What started as stolen glances and quiet moments had grown into something undeniable. They had done their best to keep their feelings private, but every time she smiled at him, every time she encouraged him through another grueling therapy session, he felt it. This wasn't just a passing feeling. He loved her, but there was one more person who needed to know: his mother. Catherine had been there for him through everything, and Gabriel couldn't stand the thought of keeping something this important from her. One evening, as they sat together watching their favorite soap opera, he took a deep breath and turned to her. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice steady but nervous. Catherine muted the television and looked at him with concern. "What is it, sweetheart?" Gabriel hesitated for only a second before saying the words he had been holding onto. "I'm in love with Sophia." For a moment, there was silence. Then, to his surprise, Catherine's face broke into a wide smile, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Oh, Gabriel," she whispered, reaching for his hands. "That's wonderful news." Relief flooded through him. "You're really okay with it?" "Of course I am," she said firmly. "I've seen the way you light up when you're around her. And I know she cares for you, too. After everything you've been through, you deserve to be happy." Encouraged by his mother's blessing, Gabriel knew it was time to take the next step. He wanted Sophia to know exactly how he felt, not just through stolen moments, but in a real, undeniable way. That weekend, he invited her to dinner at his home. Catherine, sensing the importance of the night, made a beautiful meal and stepped back to give them space. As they sat together, laughter and easy conversation filled the room. But Gabriel's heart pounded with anticipation. When the moment felt right, he took Sophia's hand in his own. "Sophia," he said, looking into her eyes, "you've changed my life in more ways than I can count. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You've helped me not just physically, but emotionally, too. I don't want to keep this hidden anymore. I want to be with you, for real." Sophia's breath hitched, and for a second, Gabriel feared he had rushed things. But then, she smiled, a smile that reached her eyes, full of warmth and something deeper. "I want that too, Gabriel," she whispered. That night, for the first time, their love was no longer a secret. And as Catherine watched from a distance, her heart swelled with happiness. Gabriel had found something she had always wished for him: true, unconditional love. Gabriel had spent years believing his life was set in stone, confined to a wheelchair, dependent on his mother, watching the world move forward without him. But now, everything was different. He was standing, walking, and more than that, he was in love, with Sophia by his side and Catherine's unwavering support. He felt like he was finally stepping into a future he had never dared to imagine. That future became even more real when Sophia gave him the news that would change their lives forever. It was a quiet morning over breakfast, the kind of simple moment Gabriel had come to treasure. Sophia had been smiling more than usual, a glow in her cheeks that he couldn't quite place. Then, she reached for his hand. "Gabriel," she said softly, her eyes shining, "I have something to tell you." His heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, then grinned. "I'm pregnant." For a second, Gabriel couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. The words hung in the air, surreal and overwhelming. "We're having a baby?" he finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. Sophia nodded, her smile widening. "Yes, A flood of emotions crashed over him: joy, disbelief, excitement, even a flicker of fear. But above all, love. He reached out, pulling her close as tears pricked his eyes. "This is the best news I've ever heard," he whispered. When they told Catherine, her reaction was just as emotional. She covered her mouth, eyes welling up with tears before embracing them both. "I'm going to be a grandmother," she said, her voice shaking with happiness. "Oh, Gabriel, Sophia, this is a blessing." From that moment on, their home was filled with a new kind of excitement. Preparing for the baby became a family effort. Catherine threw herself into every detail, helping decorate the nursery and knitting tiny blankets. Gabriel, still adjusting to his new mobility, pushed himself even harder in therapy, determined to be the kind of father his child deserved. He wanted to be strong, to be able to carry his child, to run and play without limitations. The months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, baby name discussions, and quiet moments where Gabriel would rest his hand on Sophia's stomach. Marveling at the little life they had created, they decided to name their baby Noah, a tribute to Dr. Noah, the man who had given Gabriel hope when he needed it most. Finally, on a crisp early morning, Sophia went into labor. Gabriel, though nervous, was by her side every step of the way. Hours later, he held his son for the first time, his heart bursting with love. Looking down at Noah's tiny face, Gabriel knew this was everything he had ever wanted: a family, a future, a life filled with love, and he would cherish it every single day. Life had changed in ways Gabriel never thought possible. Just a few years ago, he had been confined to a wheelchair, convinced that his future would always be limited. Now, he was not only walking, he was a husband, a father, and the head of a growing family. His days were no longer filled with longing for what he had lost but with gratitude for everything he had gained. Raising Noah brought a new kind of joy into their home. The sleepless nights, the early morning feedings, and the diaper changes were exhausting. But every small moment, Noah's first smile, his tiny fingers wrapping around Gabriel's, the way he cooed when Sophia sang to him, made it all worth it. Gabriel had never imagined he would get to experience fatherhood like this. But every day, he proved to himself that he was capable of so much more than he had ever believed. As Noah grew, so did their dreams. Gabriel and Sophia knew they wanted more for their son, a home where he could run and play freely, where they could build lasting memories as a family. After weeks of searching, they found the perfect house, a beautiful home with a spacious backyard. The kind of place where they could watch Noah take his first steps and one day teach him how to ride a bike. The move was a family affair. Catherine, who had given everything to care for Gabriel, was now being cared for in return. Gabriel and Sophia made sure she had her own room in their new home, a space decorated with love and appreciation for everything she had done for them. She had dedicated her life to Gabriel's well-being, and now it was their turn to make sure she was happy, comfortable, and surrounded by love. With each passing year, their home became a place of warmth, laughter, and celebration. They marked every milestone: Noah's first steps, his first words, his first day of school, with special dinners and quiet moments of reflection. Gabriel often found himself watching his son in awe, overwhelmed by how much had changed. Weekends became sacred in their household. They spent afternoons in the backyard, playing games and sharing meals under the sun. Catherine would sit on the porch, watching her grandson run through the grass, a proud smile always on her face. Gabriel often thought about the past, about the accident, the years in his wheelchair, the moments of doubt when he thought his life had ended before it had truly begun. But then he would look at his wife, his son, and his mother, and he knew the truth: his life hadn't ended. It had just taken a different path, one that led to something even more beautiful than he could have imagined. No matter what challenges the future held, Gabriel knew one thing for certain: his family would always face them together. Love had carried them this far, and it would continue to guide them for the rest of their lives. The main lesson from this story is that love, perseverance, and faith can overcome even the greatest challenges. Gabriel's journey from tragedy to triumph shows that no matter how difficult life becomes, there is always hope. His mother, Catherine, dedicated her life to caring for him, never giving up even when the situation seemed impossible. In return, Gabriel found the strength to fight for his own future, not just for himself but for the people who loved him. His story reminds us that with determination, support, and the right people by our side, we can overcome obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. Another powerful message is that sometimes, fear holds us back more than reality. Gabriel was afraid to tell his mother about his progress because he didn't want to disappoint her or himself. But in the end, sharing his journey led to even greater strength and support. This teaches us that honesty and trust in those who love us can make all the difference in our struggles. Now, imagine yourself in this story. What would you have done if you were Catherine? Would you have handled the situation differently if you were Gabriel? And how would you react if someone you loved was keeping a life-changing secret from you out of fear? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. How do you think you would handle a situation like this? Let's discuss it together.